The governess arrived at Thornwood Estate on a winter evening when the wind howled through the iron gates like a warning, and she should have turned back then, but Olivia Ramsey had nowhere else to go. The advertisement had been strange enough. Governess needed for difficult child. Must have patience, courage, and no family ties. Excellent compensation. Inquiries to Thornwood Estate, Northern District. She'd answered it because her landlord had given her 3 days to vacate, because her teaching certificate hadn't landed her anything better bet than rejection letters, and because 23 years of life had taught her that sometimes desperation was the only honest choice a person could make. The estate itself rose from the frozen landscape like something pulled from a Gothic nightmare, all sharp towers and dark stone, windows that gleamed like watchful eyes. The car that had picked her up from the train station, a sleek black vehicle with tinted windows, had deposited her at the front steps without ceremony. The driver, a pale man with eyes that never quite met hers, had simply gestured toward the massive oak doors and driven away before she could ask a single question. Olivia stood in the cold, her single suitcase clutched in one hand, her teaching portfolio in the other, and knocked. The door opened immediately, as if someone had been waiting just behind it. A woman stood there, tall and elegant, with skin so pale it seemed almost luminous in the dim light. Her hair was pure white, styled in an intricate braid, and her eyes were the color of old silver. She wore a black dress that looked like it cost more than Olivia had earned in her entire life. "Miss Ramsey." The woman's voice was smooth, cultured, with an accent Olivia couldn't quite place. "We've been expecting you. I am Seraphine, the head of household staff. Please, come in." The interior of the estate was even more overwhelming than the exterior. Marble floors stretched in every direction, reflecting the light from crystal chandeliers that hung like frozen waterfalls from the vaulted ceiling. Paintings lined the walls, old portraits of stern-faced figures with pale skin and dark eyes, all watching her with expressions that ranged from curiosity to disdain. "Lord Thorne will see you in his study," Seraphine said, already walking away down a long corridor. Olivia hurried to follow, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. "I must warn you, Miss Ramsey, that this position is not like any you may have held before. The child in question is challenging." "I've worked with difficult children before," Olivia said, trying to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. "Behavioral issues, learning disabilities, trauma responses. I've seen quite a bit in my training." Seraphine glanced back at her, and something that might have been amusement flickered across her perfect features. "I'm certain you have." They climbed a sweeping staircase to the second floor, then down another corridor lined with more portraits. Finally, Seraphine stopped before a set of double doors carved with intricate designs that looked like twisted branches or perhaps veins. She knocked once, softly. "Enter." The voice from within was deep, commanding, and sent an involuntary shiver down Olivia's spine. Seraphine opened the doors and stepped aside, gesturing for Olivia to enter. The study beyond was enormous, lined floor to ceiling with books that looked ancient and valuable. A fire burned in a massive fireplace, casting dancing shadows across the room. And behind a desk of dark wood that looked like it had been carved from a single massive tree, sat the man she assumed was Lord Thorne. He was the most striking person Olivia had ever seen. His skin was as pale as Seraphine's, almost luminous in the firelight, and his hair fell to his shoulders in waves of pure white. His eyes, when they lifted to meet hers, were a deep crimson that seemed to glow with their own light. He wore a black suit that fit him perfectly, emphasizing broad shoulders and a lean, powerful frame. Everything about him radiated authority, power, and something else. Something dangerous that made her instincts scream at her to run. But Olivia had learned long ago not to trust her fear. Fear had kept her trapped in bad situations before. So she stepped into the room, lifted her chin, and met those crimson eyes directly. "Lord Thorne," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I'm Olivia Ramsey. I'm here about the governess position." For a long moment, he simply stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then he stood, and Olivia realized he was tall, easily over 6 feet, and moved with a grace that seemed almost inhuman. He circled the desk slowly, studying her with an intensity that made her feel like a specimen under glass. "You are younger than I expected," he said finally. His voice carried that same indefinable accent, old and cultured, and smaller. "I assure you I'm fully qualified," Olivia replied, fighting the urge to step back as he moved closer. "I have my teaching certificate, references from 3 previous families, and specialized training in child psychology and behavioral management." "Tell me, Miss Ramsey," Thorne said, stopping just a few feet from her, close enough that she could see the way the firelight caught in his eyes. "Why did you answer this particular advertisement? A young woman with your credentials could surely find employment in more conventional circumstances." Olivia considered lying. crafting some noble reason or professional ambition. But something about those ancient eyes told her he would see through any deception immediately. "Because I need the money," she said bluntly. "Because I have no family, no ties, and no other prospects at the moment. Because I'm good at what I do and I need the chance to prove it." Something that might have been approval flickered across his face. Honesty. How refreshing. He returned to his desk, gesturing for her to sit in one of the leather chairs across from him. "I will be equally honest with you, Miss Ramsey. My son is not like other children. He is difficult in ways that go far beyond ordinary childhood rebellion." "How old is he?" Olivia asked, settling into the chair and setting her portfolio on her lap. "Physically, he appears to be around 8 years old. Mentally and emotionally." Thorne paused, something like pain crossing his features. "He is wild, violent. He attacks anyone who tries to approach him, destroys everything in his reach, and refuses to speak or respond to any form of discipline. I have employed 14 governesses in the past year alone. Most lasted less than a week. The longest tenure was 3 weeks, and that ended when my son bit her badly enough to require medical attention." Olivia's eyebrows rose. "That sounds like severe trauma or a developmental disorder. What happened to his mother?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Thorne's eyes flashed, and for just a moment Olivia saw something in them that terrified her on an instinctive level, something ancient and predatory and utterly inhuman. "His mother is dead," Thorne said, each word precisely controlled. "She died bringing him into this world. He has been this way since birth." "I'm sorry," Olivia said softly, meaning it. "That must have been devastating for both of you." Thorne looked at her sharply, as if her sympathy surprised him. "You will be paid triple what any previous governess received," he said, shifting the subject. "You will have your own quarters in the East Wing, with full access to the estate grounds and library. You will take your meals with the household staff. Your only responsibility is my son to keep him safe, to attempt to socialize him, and to help him learn control." "Control of what, exactly?" Olivia asked. "His temper, his violence, his nature." Thorne stood again, moving to the window that looked out over the dark grounds. "I will not lie to you, Miss Ramsey. This position is dangerous. You may be injured. You will certainly be frustrated and frightened. If you have any reservations, you should leave now." Olivia thought about her empty bank account, her eviction notice, the string of rejections that had followed her since graduation. She thought about the way this man looked at her when she'd mentioned his son's mother. Like the grief was still fresh, still raw, even though he held it behind layers of control. She thought about a child wild and violent and alone with no one able to reach him. "When do I start?" she asked. Thorne turned back to her, and for the first time something that might have been hope flickered in those crimson eyes. "Tomorrow morning. Seraphine will show you to your quarters. Get some rest, Miss Ramsey. You will need it." Olivia's quarters turned out to be a suite of rooms more luxurious than anywhere she'd ever lived. A bedroom with a massive 4-poster bed draped in deep green velvet, sitting room with comfortable chairs arranged before another fireplace, and a private bathroom with a clawfoot tub that looked like it belonged in a palace. Her single suitcase looked pathetically small sitting on the ornate luggage rack. Seraphine had left her with instructions to ring for anything she needed and a warning not to wander the halls at night. "The estate is old," she'd said, her silver eyes unreadable. "Some areas are unsafe after dark." Olivia had unpacked her meager belongings, changed into her nightgown, and tried to sleep. But her mind kept returning to Lord Thorne, to his crimson eyes, his pale skin, the way he moved like a predator, to his grief over his dead wife, carefully controlled but still visible, to his obvious love for his uncontrollable son, evident in every word despite his frustration. She must have eventually dozed off because she woke to a sound. It was high and wild, somewhere between a scream and a howl, echoing through the dark halls of the estate. Olivia sat up, her heart pounding, listening. There it was again, definitely a child's voice, full of rage and something that sounded like pain. She should stay in her room. She'd been warned not to wander. But the sound came again, and every instinct she had as a teacher, as someone who'd spent years learning how to help troubled children, pushed her out of bed. Olivia pulled on her robe and slippers and eased open her door. The hallway beyond was dark except for the moonlight streaming through tall windows. She followed the sound, moving quietly through corridors that seemed to stretch and twist in ways that didn't quite make sense. The portraits on the walls watched her pass with their pale faces and dark eyes. The screaming grew louder, and she heard other sounds, now crashes, something breaking, and voices trying to speak calmly over the chaos. She rounded a corner and found herself before another set of carved doors, these ones clearly damaged, with scratches gouged deep into the wood. Olivia pushed them open. The room beyond looked like a battlefield. Furniture was overturned, curtains torn from the windows, and broken toys littered the floor. In the center of the chaos stood a small figure. The boy was beautiful in the way his father was beautiful: pale skin, white hair that fell in wild tangles around his face, and eyes that glowed crimson in the darkness. He wore a nightshirt that was torn and dirty, his small feet bare. He was holding what looked like the leg of a chair, using it to methodically destroy a bookshelf. 3 people, all with that same pale skin and white hair, were trying to approach him carefully, speaking in soothing tones. The boy ignored them completely, smashing another shelf with surprising strength for such a small child. "Please, young master," one of them said, a man with kind eyes. "You must calm down. Your father will be upset." The boy whirled and threw the chair leg directly at the man's head with frightening accuracy. The man ducked, and the makeshift weapon embedded itself in the wall behind him with a crack. Olivia didn't think. She simply walked into the room, past the startled staff members, and approached the child. "Stop," one of them hissed. "Miss, you mustn't," but Olivia kept walking, keeping her movements slow and non-threatening, her hands visible at her sides. The boy turned to face her, his crimson eyes narrowing. Up close she could see he was trembling, his small hands clenched into fists. "Hello," she said softly, stopping a few feet away. "My name is Olivia. What's yours?" The boy stared at her, his chest heaving. Then he bent down, grabbed a broken piece of wood from the floor, and hurled it at her. Olivia didn't flinch or move away. The wood hit her shoulder, it hurt, but she kept her expression calm, kept her voice gentle. "That wasn't very nice," she said. "I'm trying to talk to you." The boy's eyes widened slightly, as if her lack of reaction surprised him. He grabbed another piece of debris and threw it. This one hit her arm. "Still here," Olivia said. "I'm not going anywhere." The boy made a sound that was half growl, half whimper. He looked around frantically for something else to throw, but he'd destroyed nearly everything within reach. His small body was shaking harder now, and Olivia recognized the signs of a meltdown approaching its peak. The child had burned through his rage and was heading toward collapse. She took a small step closer. "You must be tired," she said. "All this anger is exhausting, isn't it?" The boy's legs seemed to give out, and he sank to his knees among the wreckage. He was making a sound now, a high keening that broke Olivia's heart. Without thinking, she closed the distance between them and knelt down, reaching out slowly. "Don't touch him," one of the staff members cried out. "He'll bite," but Olivia was already gathering the small, trembling body into her arms. The boy went rigid for a moment, and she felt him draw breath to scream, or perhaps to sink his teeth into her throat. But instead, he suddenly collapsed against her, his small hands clutching at her robe, and began to sob. Olivia held him close, rocking slightly, murmuring nonsense words of comfort. His hair was soft under her chin, and she could feel his heart racing against her chest. He was just a child, she thought. A scared, overwhelmed child who didn't know how to express his feelings any other way. What is happening here? Olivia looked up to find Lord Thorne standing in the doorway, his crimson eyes wide with shock. He stared at her, holding his son, his violent, feral son who attacked everyone who came near him, as the boy clung to her and cried. "He had a meltdown," Olivia said calmly, as if this were the most natural thing in the world. "He's calming down now." Thorne moved into the room slowly, his gaze never leaving his son. The boy tensed in Olivia's arms, turning his head to look at his father. For a moment, something passed between them, something that looked like recognition and pain and longing all mixed together. Then the boy buried his face against Olivia's shoulder again. "I apologize, my lord," one of the staff members said quickly. "We tried to calm him, but the young master became agitated during the night. We were attempting to manage the situation when Miss Ramsey appeared." "Leave us," Thorne said quietly. The staff members bowed and retreated quickly, closing the damaged doors behind them. Thorne stood in the wreckage of his son's room, looking at Olivia as if she were a puzzle he couldn't solve. "How did you do that?" he asked finally. "I didn't do anything," Olivia replied. "I just didn't run away or fight back. Sometimes that's all a child needs, someone who won't abandon them no matter how badly they behave." Thorne moved closer, and Olivia saw the raw emotion on his face, now hope and fear and something that looked like desperation. "In 8 years," he said, his voice rough, "no one has been able to touch him without being injured. No one has been able to hold him, not even me." Olivia looked down at the child in her arms. He'd stopped crying now, his breathing evening out. She could feel the moment he fell asleep, his small body going heavy against her. "What's his name?" she asked softly. "Nikolai," Thorne said. "His name is Nikolai." "Hello, Nikolai," Olivia whispered, smoothing back his tangled white hair. "It's nice to finally meet you." When she looked up again, Thorne was staring at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. In the moonlight streaming through the torn curtains, with his pale skin and crimson eyes and the vulnerability written across his features. He looked like something out of a dream, beautiful and terrible and utterly inhuman. "What are you?" Olivia heard herself ask. Thorne was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I think you already know, Miss Ramsey." And she did. Somehow, despite how impossible it was, despite every rational thought in her head telling her it couldn't be true, she knew. The pale skin that seemed to glow, the crimson eyes, the way everyone in the estate moved with that same predatory grace, the warnings not to wander at night. "Vampires," she whispered. "Yes." Thorne didn't move, watching her carefully, perhaps waiting for her to scream or run. "This estate sits above our realm, our home beneath the city. We are one of the old families, the royal bloodlines. And Nikolai is my heir, a vampire prince who cannot control his own nature." Olivia looked down at the sleeping child in her arms. "Is that why he's like this, because of what he is?" "Partially." Thorne moved to sit on the overturned bed, his shoulders slumping slightly. "Vampire children are rare. Our kind does not reproduce easily, and when we do, the children are born with all our strength, our hunger, our instincts, but without any of the control that comes with age. They are raised carefully, taught from birth how to manage their power. But Nikolai's mother died during his birth and something went wrong. He emerged already wild, already violent, locked inside his own fury. Nothing I have tried has reached him. Until tonight. Until you." "I should be terrified," Olivia said slowly. "I should run from this place and never look back." "Yes," Thorne agreed. "You should. But I'm not going to." She met his eyes, saw the surprise there. "Because Nikolai needs help, and I think you need help too." Something that might have been a laugh escaped Thorne, rough and disbelieving. "You are either extraordinarily brave or extraordinarily foolish, Miss Ramsey." "Probably both," Olivia admitted. "But I meant what I said. I'm good at what I do, and that little boy deserves a chance to be more than his worst moments." Thorne stood and crossed to her, kneeling down so they were eye level. This close, she could see flecks of darker red in his crimson irises, could see the sharp points of his canines when he spoke. "I will make you a promise," he said. "I will protect you while you are under this roof. No one, not even my son in his worst rages, will be allowed to truly harm you, and in return I ask that you try to reach him. Try to give him what I cannot." "What's that?" Olivia asked. "Hope," Thorne said simply. Olivia nodded. "I can do that." Thorne reached out slowly, carefully, and touched his son's hair with a gentleness that seemed at odds with his powerful frame. Nikolai stirred but didn't wake, apparently comfortable enough in Olivia's arms to stay asleep. The expression on Thorne's face, love and grief and desperate hope all tangled together, made Olivia's chest ache. "Come," Thorne said, standing and holding out his hands. "Let me take him. You can return to your quarters and rest. Tomorrow will be challenging." But when Thorne tried to lift Nikolai from Olivia's arms, the boy's eyes snapped open and he let out a sharp hiss, his small hands clutching tighter at her robe. Thorne pulled back immediately, and Olivia saw the flash of hurt across his face before he controlled it. "It seems he has decided you are his," Thorne said quietly. "Very well. I will show you to the nursery. It connects to a bedroom where you can sleep with him nearby." Olivia stood carefully, cradling Nikolai close. The boy watched his father warily but didn't struggle or try to escape. "Lead the way," she said. The nursery was in a different wing, far from the destroyed room. It was beautiful, painted in soft colors, filled with expensive toys and books, everything a child could want. But it was also clearly unused. Dust covered most surfaces, and the toys looked untouched, still in their original arrangements. "I had this prepared when he was born," Thorne said, his voice distant. I thought we would be a family, that his mother and I would raise him here, would watch him grow. But she died, and he became something I could not reach, and this room has remained empty ever since." Olivia carried Nikolai to the small bed, laying him down gently. He whimpered but didn't wake, his fingers still tangled in the fabric of her robe. She carefully extracted herself and pulled a blanket over him, then turned to find Thorne watching them with an expression of such longing it made her want to cry. "You loved her very much," Olivia said softly. "His mother, Katerina." Thorne's voice was rough. "Yes. She was my mate, my equal, the one person in centuries of existence who made me feel alive. When she died," he trailed off, looking away. "I failed her. I could not save her, and I have failed our son every day since." "You haven't failed him," Olivia said firmly. "You've kept him safe, kept trying to reach him. That's not failure, that's love." Thorne looked at her, and in his ancient eyes she saw something that might have been gratitude. "You should rest, Miss Ramsey. The bedroom through that door connects to this room. If Nikolai wakes, you will hear him." "Thank you," Olivia said. Then, because he looked so lost standing there in the unused nursery, she added, "We'll figure this out, I promise." Thorne's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile but close. "You make promises easily. Only when I intend to keep them, Olivia replied. After Thorne left, Olivia stood in the nursery for a long moment watching Nikolai sleep. In rest, he looked peaceful. His small face relaxed, his white hair spread across the pillow. He looked like any other sleeping child, innocent and sweet. But she'd seen the strength in his small body, the violence in his eyes. She knew what he was, what he could become. And yet, when he'd collapsed in her arms, when he'd cried against her shoulder, all she'd felt was compassion for a child in pain. Olivia moved to the bedroom Thorne had indicated, finding another luxurious space with a comfortable bed. She lay down but didn't sleep, her mind too full of everything she'd learned. Vampires. She was working for a vampire king, caring for a vampire prince, living in a house full of creatures that should only exist in stories. And yet it all made a strange kind of sense. The generous salary that no human employer could afford. The isolation of the estate. The warnings about nighttime. The way everyone moved with that otherworldly grace. She should be terrified. But instead, all she felt was a strange sense of rightness, as if she'd finally found the place where she was meant to be. The days that followed fell into a routine that was equal parts exhausting and exhilarating. Nikolai woke that first morning with a scream, immediately reverting to his violent behavior. He threw everything he could reach, tried to bite her twice, and attempted to claw her face when she came near. But Olivia had worked with traumatized children before, and she knew the key was consistency and patience. She didn't yell or punish him. She simply stayed calm, kept her movements predictable, and talked to him constantly in a low, soothing voice.
I know you're angry,
She'd say as he hurled toys at the walls. It's okay to be angry, but we need to find better ways to express it. By the third day, he'd stopped throwing things at her specifically, though he continued to destroy everything else. By the fifth day, he allowed her to sit in the same room without screaming. By the end of the first week, he let her help him dress without biting. Thorne watched these small victories with an expression that grew more hopeful with each passing day. He came to the nursery every morning and evening, though Nikolai still wouldn't let him come close. Olivia could see the pain this caused him, but Thorne never pushed, never tried to force his son's affection. He needs time, Olivia told him one evening after Nikolai had fallen asleep. They stood in the nursery together, voices low. He's learning to trust. You can't rush that. You have more patience than anyone I have ever known, Thorne said. He was standing closer than strictly necessary, and Olivia found herself very aware of his presence, the way he smelled like winter and something else, something dark and compelling. How did you learn such control? I grew up in foster care, Olivia said, surprising herself with the confession. She rarely talked about her past. I learned early that the only person I could really depend on was myself, that no one would advocate for me or protect me if I didn't learn to control my own reactions. So I became very good at staying calm, at reading people, at surviving. Thorne's eyes darkened. You were alone, yes, but it taught me empathy. I know what it's like to feel abandoned, to feel like no one understands you. I think that's why I can reach Nikolai, because I recognize that loneliness in him. You are remarkable, Thorne said softly, and the admiration in his voice made warmth bloom in Olivia's chest. They'd been working together for 2 weeks when Nikolai spoke his first word. Olivia had been reading to him a story about a knight and a dragon that Nikolai seemed to find fascinating, despite never acknowledging her. He was playing with wooden blocks, building and destroying towers with intense focus. She'd reached the part where the knight and dragon became friends when Nikolai suddenly looked up at her. Again, he said, his voice rough from disuse. Olivia's breath caught. You want me to read it again? Nikolai nodded once, his crimson eyes watching her carefully. Of course, Olivia said, fighting to keep her voice steady despite her racing heart. She turned back to the beginning and read the story again. When she finished, Nikolai pointed at the book. Again. They read it 7 more times before Thorne appeared for his evening visit. Olivia looked up at him with tears in her eyes. He talked, she said. Thorne, he talked to me. The expression on Thorne's face was one of pure wonder. He looked at his son, who was still focused on his blocks but clearly listening. Nikolai, Thorne said carefully, can you speak to me? Nikolai's small body went tense. He looked at his father, and for a moment Olivia thought he might respond. But then he turned away, returning to his blocks with aggressive intensity. He will, Olivia said quickly, seeing the hurt in Thorne's eyes. He just needs more time to feel safe with you two. But Thorne was already leaving, his shoulders tight with disappointment. Olivia wanted to follow him, to comfort him somehow, but Nikolai grabbed her hand the first time he'd willingly touched her and held on tightly. Stay, Nikolai said, his voice small. I'm staying, Olivia promised. I'm not going anywhere. That night, after Nikolai was asleep, Olivia did go looking for Thorne. She found him in his study, sitting in the dark, staring into the fire. He didn't look up when she entered. He spoke to you, Thorne said. In 8 years he has never spoken a single word. And within 2 weeks of your arrival he is talking. He's scared of you, Olivia said gently, coming to sit in the chair across from him. Not because you've hurt him, but because he can sense how much you want his love. That kind of desperation is frightening for a child who doesn't understand his own emotions. So I am to pretend I do not care? Thorne's voice was bitter. I am to act as if my son's rejection does not tear my heart from my chest every single day? No, Olivia said firmly. You're supposed to let him see that you're patient, that your love isn't conditional on him performing correctly. He needs to know you'll still be there even if he never speaks to you, even if he never lets you hold him. Once he believes that, once he trusts it, he'll come to you. Thorne finally looked at her, and in the firelight his crimson eyes seemed to glow. You speak as if you understand this from experience. I do. Olivia pulled her cardigan tighter around herself. I was that child once. Angry and scared and pushing everyone away because I was certain they'd leave eventually anyway. The social worker who finally reached me did it by refusing to give up, by showing me that love didn't have to be earned. She just kept showing up, kept being patient until I finally believed her. What happened to her? Thorne asked softly. She died, Olivia said, her throat tight. Cancer, when I was 16. But before she died, she made sure I had everything I needed: money for college, a letter of recommendation, her belief in me. She gave me the tools to survive. Thorne stood and moved to sit beside her, close enough that she could feel the cool temperature of his skin, the otherworldly presence of him. I am sorry you lost her, he said, and I am grateful she found you, because without her you would not be here, and my son would still be lost. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the fire together. Finally, Olivia said, Tell me about Katerina. Thorne drew in a breath that he didn't need, a gesture of habit perhaps, or emotion. She was fierce, he said, a small smile playing at his lips. Beautiful and brilliant and absolutely fearless. When I met her, she was leading her own court, one of the few female vampire rulers in our world. She challenged me at every turn, never backing down, never accepting anything less than respect and equality. You loved that about her, Olivia said. I loved everything about her. Thorne's voice grew rough. We were together for nearly a century before she became pregnant. It is so rare for our kind, we thought it was a miracle. We prepared for Nikolai's arrival with such joy, such hope. He paused, his hands clenching. But the birth was difficult. Something went wrong. Vampire children are born with their nature already active, their power already present. Most emerge peacefully, already aware and controlled. But Nikolai came into the world in a rage, and in his fury he drained Katerina before anyone could stop him. She died bringing him life, and he has been consumed by that violence ever since. Olivia's breath caught. He killed his own mother? Does he know? I do not know what he knows, Thorne said. He was merely hours old, though he had the awareness of a much older child. I have never told him, but vampires have long memories. It is possible he remembers. That the guilt and horror of what he did are what drive his violence. Oh God, Olivia whispered. That poor child. And you've been living with the loss of your mate and the pain of your son's suffering all at once. I do not tell you this for sympathy, Thorne said. I tell you so you understand what you have taken on. Nikolai is not simply a difficult child. He is a creature of immense power trapped in a body and mind that cannot process or control it. He is dangerous, Olivia. And yet you hold him and read to him and show him patience as if he were any other child. Because he is, Olivia said firmly. He's a child who's been living with trauma since the moment he was born. He needs help processing that trauma, understanding his emotions, learning he isn't defined by his worst moment. That's what I'm here for. Thorne reached out slowly and took her hand. His skin was cool, his grip gentle but firm. You are unlike anyone I have ever known, he said, his voice low and intense, human or vampire. You walk into a house of immortal predators without fear. You embrace a violent child without hesitation. And you speak of hope as if it is something we deserve. Olivia's heart was racing at his touch, at the way he was looking at her like she was something precious and rare. Everyone deserves hope, she said softly. Even vampire kings, especially vampire kings, Thorne murmured. He lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, a gesture that felt both old-fashioned and intimate. Thank you, Olivia Ramsey, for giving me something I thought I had lost forever. By the end of the first month, Nikolai was speaking in full sentences, playing with toys appropriately, and allowing Olivia to hold him whenever he was upset. He still had moments of rage, times when his vampire nature overwhelmed him, and he would destroy whatever was within reach. But these episodes were growing less frequent, and he was learning to recognize the warning signs. Angry, he would say, his small body trembling. Feel angry? I know, Olivia would reply calmly. Let's go to the safe room. They'd converted one of the unused bedrooms into a space where Nikolai could rage safely. The walls were padded, the furniture soft and unbreakable. When he felt his control slipping, they would go there together, and Olivia would sit by the door while he screamed and hit the walls and let his fury burn itself out. When he was done, exhausted and shaking, she would hold him and tell him he was safe, that she understood, that his anger didn't make him bad. Thorne watched these changes with a mixture of hope and grief. Nikolai still wouldn't speak to him, still flinched away when he came too close. But Olivia could see the longing in both their eyes, father and son, separated by fear and guilt and years of pain. He needs to know about Katerina, Olivia told Thorne one evening. They'd fallen into a pattern of meeting in his study after Nikolai was asleep, talking about the day's progress and whatever else came to mind. These conversations had become the highlight of Olivia's days, a chance to be with Thorne without the careful distance they maintained around Nikolai. He is too young for such knowledge, Thorne argued, though his protest was weak. He's 8 years old physically, but he has the awareness of someone much older. You said so yourself, and I think he already knows on some level. I think that's what's been eating at him all this time, the guilt of something he can't even name. Olivia leaned forward, earnest. He needs to hear it from you. He needs to know what happened, and that you don't blame him, and that his mother would have loved him. Thorne closed his eyes, pain etched across his perfect features. What if hearing it breaks him further? What if knowing he killed his own mother destroys what little progress we have made? What if it sets him free? Olivia countered. Right now he's carrying a weight he can't understand. Give him the truth. Give him the chance to grieve properly. It took 3 more days for Thorne to gather the courage. When he finally appeared in the nursery one evening and asked to speak with Nikolai, Olivia saw her hands were shaking as she nodded and stepped back. Thorne knelt down a few feet from where Nikolai was playing, making himself less intimidating. Nikolai, he said softly, I need to tell you something important. Will you listen? Nikolai looked up warily but didn't run or hide. That in itself was progress. 8 years ago, Thorne began, his voice steady despite the emotion Olivia could see in his eyes. Your mother and I were preparing to welcome you into the world. We loved you before we ever met you. We dreamed of the person you would become, the life we would share as a family. Nikolai's small hands had stilled on his toys. He was listening intently. But when you were born, something went wrong. You came into this world with all the power and hunger of our kind already active, and in those first moments, before anyone could help, you fed from your mother. She died giving you life, Nikolai. The boy made a sound, a high, keening noise that tore at Olivia's heart. His small body began to shake. Listen to me, Thorne said urgently, moving closer. It was not your fault. You were a newborn child with instincts you could not control. Your mother knew the risks. She chose to bring you into this world knowing she might not survive it. And she would have made the same choice 1,000 times over because she loved you. Because you were wanted and cherished and worth any price, killed her. Nikolai sobbed, the words barely intelligible. I killed her, bad, I'm bad, no. Thorne reached out, and for the first time Nikolai didn't pull away. You are not bad, you are my son, you are her son. You are made of our love, and nothing can change that. Nikolai launched himself at Thorne, his small body colliding with his father's chest. Thorne caught him, holding him tightly as the boy sobbed against his shoulder. They knelt there together on the nursery floor, father and son finally connected, while 8 years of grief and guilt and longing poured out between them. Olivia backed quietly out of the room, tears streaming down her face, and left them to their reunion. She was in her quarters, trying to compose herself, when Thorne appeared. He moved with that impossible vampire speed, there in the blink of an eye, and pulled her into his arms. Thank you, he whispered against her hair. Thank you for giving him back to me. Thank you for giving me hope when I had none. Thank you for being exactly what we needed. Olivia pulled back just enough to see his face. His crimson eyes were bright with unshed tears, his expression more open and vulnerable than she'd ever seen. Without thinking, she reached up and touched his cheek, feeling the cool smoothness of his skin. I'm so glad I came here, she said softly. I'm so glad I found you both. Thorne's eyes darkened, the crimson deepening to something that reminded her of wine or blood or passion. Olivia, he said, her name a prayer or a plea. I am falling in love with you. Her breath caught. You barely know me. I know you are kind and brave and patient beyond measure. I know you see the best in people, even when they cannot see it themselves. I know that when you smile, it feels like sunlight, something I have not experienced in centuries but remember still. I know that my son loves you, and I trust his instincts more than anyone's. Thorne's hand came up to cup her face, his touch gentle despite his strength. and I know that every moment with you feels like coming home. I'm human, Olivia whispered. I'm mortal. I'll age and die while you stay exactly as you are. I know, Thorne said, and I do not care. Whatever time we have, whether it is 50 years or 5, it will be worth it. You are worth it. Olivia's heart was pounding so hard she was certain he could hear it. I'm falling in love with you too, she admitted. I have been since that first night, watching you look at your son with so much love despite everything. I've never felt this way about anyone. Thorne's smile was radiant, the first real smile she'd seen from him. Then he leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and kissed her. His lips were cool against hers but surprisingly soft, moving with a tenderness that made her knees weak. Olivia kissed him back, her hands sliding into his white hair, pulling him closer. He made a sound low in his throat, not quite human, and deepened the kiss, his arms tightening around her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, or at least she was, Thorne rested his forehead against hers. I want to court you properly, he said. I want to give you everything you deserve, time and attention and romance. I want to show you my world, introduce you to my people as someone precious to me. Will you allow me that? Yes, Olivia said, smiling despite the tears on her cheeks. Yes to all of it. The weeks that followed were among the happiest of Olivia's life. Nikolai's progress continued, his violent episodes becoming rare as he learned to express his emotions in healthier ways. He began asking about Katerina, wanting to know what she looked like, what she enjoyed, what kind of person she had been. Thorne answered every question patiently, sharing memories of his late mate with a fondness that no longer carried overwhelming pain. Do you think she would have liked me? Nikolai asked one day, his voice small. She would have adored you, Thorne said firmly, pulling his son into his lap, something Nikolai now allowed regularly. She would have been so proud of the young man you are becoming. And she would have liked Olivia too, Nikolai added, because Olivia makes us both happy. Thorne's eyes met Olivia's over Nikolai's white hair, and the love she saw there made her chest ache in the best way. True to his word, Thorne courted her properly. He took her to dinner in the vampire city beneath the estate, a place of impossible beauty, with streets lit by luminescent crystals and buildings that looked like they'd been carved from single pieces of stone. The vampires they passed stared at her with curiosity and, occasionally, hunger, but none approached. Thorne kept her close, his presence a clear warning that she was under his protection. He showed her the library that held texts thousands of years old, taught her about vampire history and politics, introduced her to his court as Lady Olivia Ramsey, governess to the prince and beloved of the king. The formal title had made her blush, but the pride in Thorne's voice had made her heart soar. They had dinner together every evening after Nikolai was asleep, talking for hours about everything and nothing. Thorne told her stories of his long life, the wars he'd fought, the changes he'd witnessed, the loneliness of immortality. Olivia shared her own smaller stories growing up in foster care, her years in university, her dreams of making a difference in children's lives. You have made a difference, Thorne told her one night, reaching across the table to take her hand. You have changed everything for us. They kissed, often stolen moments in corridors, longer encounters in Thorne's study, sweet embraces when saying goodnight. Thorne was always careful with her, always mindful of his strength and her fragility. But Olivia could feel the passion barely restrained beneath his control, could see the hunger in his eyes when he looked at her. I want more, she told him one night after a particularly heated kiss had left them both trembling. I want all of you. You have all of me, Thorne said, his voice rough. My heart, my loyalty, my love, all of it is yours. That's not what I meant. Olivia felt her cheeks heat but forced herself to continue. I want to be with you completely. I'm ready for that. Thorne's eyes flashed crimson, desire clear in every line of his body. But he cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing her cheek. Not yet, he said softly. When we take that step, I want it to be perfect. I want to give you everything you deserve, a proper commitment, a real promise. I want you to be certain this is what you want, because once I truly claim you as mine, I will never let you go. I'm already certain, Olivia protested. Give me time to do this right, Thorne said, kissing her forehead. Trust me. 3 months after Olivia's arrival, everything changed. She woke in the middle of the night to screaming, not Nikolai's voice, but multiple voices, shouting an alarm. Olivia threw on her robe and ran to the nursery, finding it empty. Her heart lurched with fear. Nikolai, she called, running into the hallway. Seraphine appeared, her usually composed face tight with worry. Miss Ramsey, you must go back to your quarters, she said urgently. The estate is under attack. What? By whom? But even as she asked, Olivia heard crashes from below, sounds of fighting. Where is Nikolai? Where is Thorne? The prince is safe in the vault. Lord Thorne is defending the entrance to our realm. Please. You must, but Olivia was already running toward the sounds of violence. Ignoring Seraphine's protests, she flew down the stairs and skidded to a halt at the sight before her. The entrance hall was a battlefield. A group of vampires she didn't recognize, all with pale skin and white hair but dressed in black armor, were fighting Thorne and his household guard. Bodies littered the marble floor, some barely moving, others completely still. And in the center of it all, Thorne fought like something out of a nightmare, moving with impossible speed and grace, his strength devastating. "Thorne!" Olivia shouted without thinking, his head whipped toward her, his eyes widening in horror. "Olivia, run!" In that moment of distraction, one of the attackers lunged. Thorne blocked the strike meant for his heart, but a blade opened a deep gash across his shoulder. He snarled and snapped the attacker's neck with a twist of his hands, but more were coming. Olivia saw one of them break away from the fight and head in her direction. She stumbled backward, but the vampire was faster, closing the distance in a blur. She felt cold hands grab her arms, felt herself being lifted and then slammed against the wall hard enough to knock the breath from her lungs. "The human pet," the vampire hissed, his breath cold against her face. "The king's weakness. You will make excellent leverage." Then Thorne was there, moving faster than Olivia's eyes could follow. He tore the vampire away from her with a roar that shook the chandelier overhead. Olivia slid down the wall, her vision blurring, and watched as Thorne fought with a savagery she'd never seen. He wasn't the controlled, elegant vampire king now. He was a creature of pure violence, protecting what was his. The battle seemed to last forever and no time at all. When it was finally over, when the last of the attackers lay dead or dying on the marble floor, Thorne turned to Olivia. His face was splattered with blood, his clothes torn, his eyes wild. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, kneeling beside her and running his hands over her body, checking for injuries. "Tell me you are not hurt." "I'm okay," Olivia managed, though her back ached where she'd hit the wall and her head was pounding. "What was that? Who were they?" "Rebels from a rival court," Thorne said, his voice tight with fury. "They believe vampire royalty should not mix with humans, that I dishonor my position by keeping you here. They came to kill you, to make an example." "They knew about me?" Olivia asked, shocked. "Everyone knows about you," Thorne said. "The human governess who tamed the feral prince, who won the heart of the vampire king. You are famous in our world, beloved, and that makes you a target." Seraphine appeared, moving quickly despite a wound in her side. "My lord, the prince is asking for his father and Miss Ramsey. He heard the fighting." "Go to him," Olivia urged, trying to stand. Her legs wobbled and Thorne caught her immediately. "He needs to know you're both safe." "I am not leaving you," Thorne said fiercely. Not after he cut himself off, his jaw clenching. "You could have died. If I had been a moment slower, if they had killed you." "But they didn't," Olivia said, cupping his face despite the blood that stained his skin. "I'm fine. We're all fine." But she could see the fear in his eyes, could feel the way his hands trembled as he held her. This attack had shaken him badly. They went to the vault together, a reinforced room deep beneath the estate where Nikolai had been hidden during the attack. The boy launched himself at them both, his small arms wrapping around their waists, his face buried against Thorne's side. "Scared," Nikolai said, his voice muffled. "I was scared, I know, little one," Thorne said, lifting him easily. "But we are safe now." "They wanted to hurt Olivia," Nikolai said, and there was something hard in his young voice, something that reminded Olivia he was a vampire prince with power and strength beyond his years. "I heard them say her name. I wanted to help, but the guards wouldn't let me out. And thank the ancients for that," Thorne said. "You staying safe was the only thing that kept me sane during the fight." They spent the rest of the night together in the vault, waiting while Thorne's people secured the estate and disposed of the bodies. Nikolai fell asleep eventually, curled between them, but Olivia and Thorne stayed awake, their hands clasped over their sleeping child. "This cannot happen again," Thorne said finally, his voice low and intense. "I cannot risk you like this. I cannot—" He stopped, his grip tightening on her hand. "I have lost too much already. I cannot lose you too." "You won't," Olivia said. "You do not understand." Thorne turned to face her fully, and in the dim light of the vault his crimson eyes seemed to glow. "There are factions in the vampire world that will never accept a human in the royal family. They will always see you as a weakness, a target. Tonight was not the last attempt on your life. It will not even be the 100th. "Then we fight them," Olivia said simply. "Or I could turn you," Thorne said quietly. Olivia's breath caught. "What? Make you vampire? It is possible, difficult and dangerous, but possible. You would have to drink my blood, die, and be reborn. You would be pale and strong and immortal. You would be my equal in the eyes of my people, beyond their reach." Thorne's voice was urgent now, almost desperate. "You would be safe. We could have eternity together instead of just decades. Please, Olivia, let me protect you this way." Olivia pulled her hand away, her mind reeling. You want me to die? To stop being human? I want you to live, Thorne said fiercely. I want you beside me for more than just your short mortal lifespan. I want you to be my mate, my queen, the mother to Nikolai in truth. I want forever with you. But I would stop being me, Olivia said, tears springing to her eyes. Everything that makes me human, my warmth, my heartbeat, my ability to walk in sunlight, all of it would be gone. I would become a predator, would need to drink blood to survive. How can you ask me to give up everything I am? I am asking you to become something more, Thorne said. To join me in my world completely. No, Olivia said, standing despite Nikolai's sleeping form between them. You're asking me to prove my love by destroying myself. That's not fair. Fair? Thorne stood as well, his voice rising. Olivia, there are vampires who want you dead simply for existing in my life. How is that fair? How is it fair that I finally find someone who makes me want to live again, who makes me believe in hope and happiness, and I have to face losing her to age or violence in the blink of an immortal eye? So this is about you, Olivia said, her own temper flaring. About what you want, what you're afraid of losing. It's not about me or what I want at all. That is not true, Thorne said. But there was doubt in his voice now. Isn't it? Olivia wrapped her arms around herself. Did you even consider that I might not want to be vampire? That I might love being human? Might not want to give up sunlight and warmth and everything I know? Or did you just assume I would jump at the chance to be with you forever? Thorne's expression closed off, his face becoming the mask of control she hadn't seen since her first night at the estate. I assumed, he said coldly, that you loved me enough to want eternity together. I was clearly mistaken. That's not fair, Olivia said, but Thorne was already moving toward the vault door. I need to ensure the estate's security, he said without looking back. Seraphine will take you to your quarters when it is safe. Then he was gone, and Olivia was left alone with Nikolai, tears streaming down her face, wondering how the most beautiful relationship of her life had just fallen apart. The next days were torture. Thorne avoided her completely, conducting his visits with Nikolai during the day when Olivia was supposed to be resting. The few times they did cross paths, he was coldly polite, speaking only of household matters before making excuses to leave. Nikolai, caught in the middle, was confused and unhappy. Why is Papa angry? He asked Olivia one afternoon. Why won't you talk to each other? We had a disagreement, Olivia said carefully. Sometimes adults fight, even when they love each other. But you do love each other, Nikolai pressed. I can tell, and Papa is sad all the time now. He tries to hide it, but I know. Olivia's heart ached. I know he is. I'm sad too. Then fix it, Nikolai said with the simple logic of a child. Say you're sorry, make up. If only it were that simple, Olivia thought. She tried to understand Thorne's perspective. He'd already lost one mate tragically. The thought of losing another to age or violence must be unbearable. And she knew his offer to turn her came from love, from desperation to keep her safe. But she couldn't stop being angry that he hadn't truly considered her feelings. That he'd presented transformation as the only solution without asking what she wanted. That he'd made it about his fear instead of their future together. A week after their fight, Seraphine appeared at Olivia's door with an envelope. From Lord Thorne, she said quietly, her silver eyes sympathetic. Olivia opened it with shaking hands to find a letter written in elegant script. Olivia, I have been a fool. In my fear of losing you, I forgot to honor what I love most about you, your strength, your independence, your right to choose your own path. You were correct. I was thinking only of myself, of my terror at facing an eternity alone after having known your light. I did not consider what I was asking you to sacrifice, did not give weight to your humanity and all it means to you. I am sorry. I am so deeply, profoundly sorry. I do not rescind my offer. If you ever wish to become vampire, I will help you through the transformation with every resource I possess. But I will not pressure you. I will not make my love conditional on your choice. Whether you remain human and we have 50 years together, or you choose transformation and we have eternity, I will treasure every moment. You are worth it, Olivia. You are worth any price, any pain, any temporary nature our relationship might have. I love you. I will always love you. And I will wait as long as you need for you to forgive me. Yours in eternity or in moments, Thorne Whitmore. Olivia read the letter 3 times, tears blurring her vision. Then she was running through the corridors, not caring that it was daylight and Thorne should be resting. She found him in his study, sitting in the dark with the curtains drawn against the sun, looking more tired than she'd ever seen him. Thorne, she said from the doorway. He stood immediately, hope and fear warring in his expression. Olivia, did you receive my letter? I love you, she said, closing the distance between them. Love you so much it terrifies me. And I forgive you because I understand why you reacted the way you did. I am still sorry, Thorne said, reaching for her hands. I will spend as long as necessary proving it. I've been thinking about what you said, Olivia continued. About turning me, and I need you to understand I'm not saying no forever. But I'm not ready yet. I need time to really think about it, to understand what it would mean, to make sure it's what I want and not just what I think you need. I understand, Thorne said immediately. And I swear to you, I will not push. This is your decision, Olivia. Yours alone. But I do want forever with you, Olivia said, stepping closer. Human or vampire, I want to be by your side. I want to be Nikolai's mother in every way that matters. I want to be your mate, your partner, your equal. You already are my equal, Thorne said fiercely. Your humanity does not diminish you. If anything, it makes you more remarkable, so much compassion and strength packed into a mortal frame. They kissed then, desperate and relieved, holding each other tight. When they finally broke apart, Thorne rested his forehead against hers. I have something to ask you, he said. Something I should have led with instead of demanding you change everything about yourself. What? Olivia asked. Thorne pulled back and to her shock dropped to one knee. From his pocket he produced a ring, a band of white gold set with a deep red stone that seemed to glow with inner light. Olivia Ramsey, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife? My mate, the mother to my son? Will you stand beside me, human or vampire, for as long as we are granted? Will you let me love you, protect you, cherish you for whatever time we have? Olivia was crying openly now, her hands covering her mouth. Yes, she said. Yes, of course, yes. Thorne slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, warm against her skin despite his cool touch. Then he stood and swept her into his arms, spinning her around as she laughed and cried at the same time. We are getting married, he said, wonder in his voice. You are going to be my wife, and you're going to be my husband, Olivia said, kissing him again. My vampire king husband. I prefer simply Thorne, he said with a smile. The vampire king can be for everyone else. With you I am simply a man in love, they told Nikolai together that evening. The boy's face lit up with joy. Does this mean Olivia will be my mother, he asked. If you want me to be, Olivia said carefully. Nikolai threw himself at her, hugging her tightly. I want it more than anything, he said. I miss my birth mother, even though I never really knew her. But I love you too. Is it okay to love you both? More than okay, Thorne said, his voice rough. He wrapped his arms around them both. Your mother would have wanted you to be loved, to be happy. Olivia does not replace her. She honors her by caring for you the way Katerina would have. Then yes, Nikolai said firmly. You're my mother now, my family. The wedding took place a month later in the vampire city beneath the estate. It was a spectacle unlike anything Olivia had ever imagined. The great hall of Thorne's court, lit by thousands of candles and luminescent crystals, filled with vampires from every major bloodline, all dressed in finery that looked like it belonged in a museum. Olivia wore a gown of deep emerald silk that Thorne had commissioned, fitted perfectly to her body, with a train that sparkled as she walked. Her hair was styled in an intricate updo, with small crystals woven through it that caught the light. She looked, she had to admit, like something out of a fairy tale. Thorne waited for her at the altar in a black suit with silver accents, his white hair flowing over his shoulders, his crimson eyes locked on her as she walked down the aisle. Nikolai stood beside him as his best man, wearing a matching suit and practically vibrating with excitement. The ceremony was a blend of vampire tradition and human custom. They exchanged rings and vows in front of the assembled court. When the vampire priest pronounced them married, Thorne pulled Olivia into a kiss that was just shy of inappropriate, earning cheers and laughter from the crowd. My wife, he murmured against her lips. My love. My everything, my husband, Olivia replied. My vampire king. The reception was magnificent music and dancing, food brought in specially for the human guests. Olivia's former social worker's daughter had come, along with a few friends from university, and blood wine for the vampires. Olivia danced with Thorne, with Nikolai, with various vampire nobles who wanted to formally welcome her to their world. You are good for him, Seraphine said during one of these dances, having claimed Olivia for a turn. For them both. You brought light back into this house. They brought purpose to my life, Olivia replied. I was lost before I came here. Then you are all fortunate to have found each other, Seraphine said with a rare smile. As the night wore on, Thorne pulled Olivia away from the celebration, leading her through hidden passages to a private chamber. It was beautiful, all dark wood and rich fabrics, with a massive bed draped in silk and a fire burning in the hearth. Our wedding night, Thorne said, suddenly seeming almost nervous. I want it to be perfect for you. It already is, Olivia said, reaching up to pull him down for a kiss. You're perfect. They made love with a tenderness that brought tears to Olivia's eyes. Thorne was so careful with her, so mindful of his strength. worshipping her body with hands and lips that left her trembling. Afterward they lay tangled together, Thorne's cool skin against her warmth, and talked quietly about their future. "I have been thinking," Thorne said, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder, "about your concerns regarding transformation. Perhaps we could compromise." "How?" Olivia asked. "We could wait," Thorne said. "Let you live your human life 20, 30, 40 years, and then if you wish, I could turn you. You would have your time in the sun, your warm blood, your humanity, and then when you are ready we could have eternity." Olivia considered this, her heart swelling with love for this man who was trying so hard to honor her needs. "That sounds perfect," she said. "Let me experience my mortality fully, and then, when I'm ready to let it go, I'll become vampire with you. And Nikolai will have a mother for his entire life," Thorne added. "Human first, then vampire. He will never have to lose you." "We have time," Olivia said, snuggling closer. "Time to figure it all out, to build our family, to love each other. That's what matters." The years that followed were filled with more joy than Olivia had ever imagined possible. Nikolai thrived under her continued guidance, growing from a violent feral child into a thoughtful, kind young man. He learned to control his vampire nature, to channel his strength and power appropriately. He studied with tutors, trained with warriors, and prepared for his eventual role as heir to his father's court. Olivia continued her work, not just with Nikolai but with other vampire children who struggled with control. She became known throughout the vampire world as an expert in childhood development for their kind, writing books and giving lectures, always with Thorne's support and protection. They were happy, deliriously, wonderfully happy. Thorne was attentive and loving, always making time for her despite his duties as king. They had date nights, took trips to see the world, always at night, always in vampire-friendly locations, and built a life that felt full and rich. Olivia did age, of course. By the time she reached her 40s, there were lines around her eyes and silver threads in her dark hair. But Thorne still looked at her like she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Still made love to her with the same passion and tenderness. Still called her his heart. When she turned 50, they had the conversation again. "I think I'm ready," Olivia said one evening as they sat together in their private chambers. "To be turned. To become vampire." Thorne looked at her carefully. "Are you certain? There is no rush, beloved. You have years yet." "I know," Olivia said. "But I want more than years. I want centuries. I want to see Nikolai grow fully into his power, want to meet his children someday if he has them. I want to rule beside you as your true equal." And she smiled wryly. "I want to stop feeling every ache and pain that comes with aging." Thorne laughed, pulling her close. "You are certain, completely certain," Olivia said. "I'm ready to become vampire. I'm ready for forever." The transformation was brutal. Olivia had to drink deeply from Thorne's wrist, his ancient blood filling her mouth with a taste like metal and wine and power. Then he had to drain her, carefully taking her to the edge of death without pushing her over completely. Finally, she had to die, stop breathing. Stop moving, let the darkness take her. When she woke, everything was different. Her vision was sharper, able to pick out individual dust motes in the air. Her hearing was acute, catching conversations from rooms away. Her body felt strong and powerful, all her aches and pains gone. And when she looked in the mirror, she saw pale skin, eyes that had shifted to a bright crimson, and hair that had turned pure white. She looked like she belonged to Thorne's world now. She looked vampire. "How do you feel?" Thorne asked, hovering anxiously nearby. Olivia tested her new strength, lifting a heavy chair with one hand as easily as if it were made of paper. She moved across the room in a blur, faster than she'd ever moved before. She breathed in and caught 1,000 scents she'd never noticed as human. "I feel incredible," she said, turning to her husband with a grin. "I feel powerful. I feel." She lunged at him playfully, tackling him onto the bed with her new strength. "I feel like I could take on the world." Thorne laughed, rolling so he was above her, his eyes glowing with love and desire. "That is my wife," he said proudly. "My fierce, beautiful, eternal mate." They made love again, and it was different now, no holding back, no fear of Thorne's strength accidentally hurting her. They matched each other perfectly, vampire to vampire, passion to passion. Afterward, as they lay together in the darkness, Thorne said softly, "You have given me everything: hope, love, my son back, a reason to believe in the future. I will spend eternity trying to deserve you." "You already do," Olivia said, kissing him. "You always have." Nikolai, now 23 years old and every bit the vampire prince, burst those chambers the next evening with no regard for privacy. "Mother," he called, "I want to see." He stopped, staring at Olivia with wide eyes. "You did it. You're vampire." "I am," Olivia said, standing and moving to embrace her son. He was taller than her now, but he still hugged her with the enthusiasm of the small boy he'd once been. "You're beautiful," Nikolai said. "Though you were beautiful before too." but now you look like you truly belong here." "I do belong here," Olivia said firmly. "This is my home. You and your father are my family. Nothing will ever change that." The years, no, the decades that followed were everything Olivia had dreamed. She ruled beside Thorne as his queen, respected and honored by their people. She continued her work with vampire children, her insights now even deeper with her own vampire perspective. She watched Nikolai mature into a wise and powerful leader, eventually finding his own mate and starting his own family. She walked through centuries at Thorne's side, facing challenges and triumphs together. There were still threats, there always would be in the vampire world's complex politics, but they faced them as partners, as equals, as mates in every sense of the word. On their 100th wedding anniversary, Thorne arranged a celebration that rivaled their wedding. The entire court gathered along with vampire nobles from around the world to honor their century together. "I told you once that you were worth any price, any pain, any temporary nature our relationship might have," Thorne said in his speech, his hand clasped with Olivia's. "I was wrong. What we have is not temporary. It is eternal. And she is worth more than I ever imagined. She is my heart, my soul, my reason for existing through countless years. To my wife, my queen, my eternal love, thank you for choosing me. Thank you for choosing us. Thank you for every moment of the last 100 years and all the moments yet to come." Olivia rose to speak, looking out at the gathered crowd, at Nikolai and his family, at the life she'd built in this impossible world. 150 years ago, I arrived at this estate with nothing but a single suitcase and a desperate need for a job. I had no idea I was walking into my destiny. I had no idea that the difficult child I was hired to care for would become my beloved son, that the grieving vampire king would become my eternal mate, that I would find a home and a family and a purpose beyond anything I'd ever dreamed. You have all given me a life beyond measure, and I promise you another 100 years, another 1,000, another eternity of service, love and dedication to this family and this court. Thank you for letting me belong." The celebration lasted for days, filled with joy and love and hope, and when it was finally over, when the last guests had departed and the estate was quiet again, Olivia and Thorne stood together in their chambers, looking out over the grounds where their story had begun so long ago. "No regrets?" Thorne asked softly, his arm around her waist. "Not a single one," Olivia replied, leaning into his embrace. "This is exactly where I'm meant to be." "Forever," Thorne said. "Forever," Olivia agreed. And in the darkness of their vampire home, surrounded by love and family, and the promise of endless time together, they kissed a vampire king and his mortal turned immortal queen, bound together by choice and love, and an eternity of moments yet to come. Their story, which had begun with a feral child and a desperate governess, had transformed into something legendary, a tale of trust and patience, of love that conquered fear, of a family built from broken pieces into something stronger than any of them could have been alone. It was a story that would be told for centuries in the vampire world, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful magic was simply refusing to give up on those we love, and they lived happily, truly, and completely forever after.